Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all ready for the learning curve. May I invite our expert speakers, Mr. Gregory Bhurar and Mr. Nilesh Pandit on the dais. Thank you. The topic is such as youthful as you all are. It's such a fresh topic which has changed and changed the way we have been working, thinking, and it is going to change the way the world is going to work in future, and that's truly very dynamic. So, as the topic is dynamic, our speakers are also really very, very dynamic. They have been, floating their entire career through several topics, several dynamics of intellectual property rights as well as of the software. So, with great pleasure, I'm introducing both the speakers. So, firstly, Mr. Gregory Bhurar. He's partner at ClarkQuest USA, and he has brought extensive expertise in software patent drafting. Very illustrative career of 20 plus years in software patent drafting at USA. Also, complex applications in AI, bioinformatics, and math-intensive technologies. His experience in litigation support, licensing, and legal code review, thriving on the challenges of niche fields like AI and bioinformatics. The profile is really very long, but I have comprised it with the permission of Greg. Then we have Mr. Nilesh Pandit. He has come from Pune. He is heading the IPR patents practices at TCS Tata Consultancy Services. His work focuses on advancing the field of intellectual property through invention mining, solution envisioning, patent evaluation, and fostering IP community development and awareness within his organization. So, I'm sorry. I'd like to felicitate both the speakers today. So let's dive in the engaging discussion and gain some valuable insights. Over to you, Greg and Mr. Nilesh.
Right. Well, introduction. Yeah, please. Whatever you want. Yeah, put that,
Junk.
Well, that's interesting. That's not what we want, though. Just the background, okay. There we go. Okay. Is my mic up? Is it good? Okay. All right, everyone. Ethics of AI and intellectual property, balancing innovation and art. So let's try to get a handle on. Thank you for the kind introduction, by the way, and thank you for having me here. This is sort of a special group of people who are interested in this. Right? It's not the usual things. So I'll try to focus on this. However, I will say that I had a little difficulty putting this presentation together because we're looking at, as was rightly said, new ground, and there's a lot of room here for opinion. There's a lot of room for judgment. And so what I'd like to do is to push the discussion into a direction that is of most benefit to people here. I'd like to take a survey. So if you could tell me When you think of intellectual property, what are you thinking of? Okay, I'm going to give you some choices, and you can raise your hand more than one time. It's okay, there's no cost. How many people think about trademark when they think about IP? Okay. How many people think about copyright when they think of IP? Okay. How many people think of patents? Okay, so we have a pretty good balanced group here. That's very unusual. And I could go on and on and on, but you see, there's actually many aspects to IP, right? And these things are going to touch each of those in different ways. And so, trying to put this presentation together, one of the first things I did, of course, is I went to ChatGPT, as I did in almost every presentation I give these days. And I said, hi, ChatGPT, we are giving a presentation on this. And I used specific prompting, right? I said, what are the top 5 questions that the audience might have? And it came up with some good ideas. They weren't perfect. And I chose 1 or 2 of those and actually ended up getting those because it's something that I might not have thought of. Or I might have to sit down and think for an hour to come up with it. And ChatGPT came up with it in, 5 seconds. So this is the world that we live in now. Things have changed, as was rightly said. And things will continue to change moving forward. I'm going to get these phones out of my pocket so that I can spin around without hurting myself. Okay, so let's jump in. My presentation is licensed under Creative Commons. That means you can make as many copies as you like. I would actually be flattered if you want to make any copies. And then I had trouble trying to figure out how to organize this. I looked at the questions, I looked at the answers that I came up with. I actually ended up reading an old-fashioned thing called a magazine that had some issues about ethics in it. And it's interesting, this is how I decided to group these things together. I'm sure you could group them some other way, but this is what I came up with. What gets protected? So that's a big question, right? Some of the stuff we're wondering, will this actually be protected or not? Will AI transform things that are protected, make it so that things that were protected are no longer protected? Or do we try to find out new categories of things that we protected that weren't protected before? And then, who owns what? This is a big question. People are talking about, can an AI be an author? Can an AI be an inventor? Okay, I don't know the answers to all those questions, but I do want to know who owns it, because that's going to be a pivotal question, right? We want to know who owns it. And then ethics-driven outcomes. Oftentimes what happens is we look at the system, we come up with ideas, and then we want to shape policy. We want to shape what happens in our society. And there will be questions that come up and answers that we will have, particularly when we shape the legal landscape, as to what type of behavior the legal landscape encourages. Are we trying to encourage X behavior or Y behavior? Are we trying to punish X behavior or Y behavior? Now, we can make things illegal. And we can say it's against the law for you to do this. And there might be some cases when we do that, right? If we have an AI, for example, that teaches people how to break into people's houses, we might want to have some sort of restriction on that. Or if we have an AI that tells you how to build a nuclear bomb, we may want to put some sort of that might be a national security interest, right? But there are also other things that happen from day to day, hour to hour, when we're making our decisions and we decide, and when companies decide how to invest. They can invest based on these outcomes. We can shape people's behavior and push things in the direction we want. And as we'll see, the IP system is there for a particular group of people. And it's not the rich corporates. I mean, certainly they can benefit, but that's not the reason that it exists. So, the theme is that the IP is supposed to benefit the public. If it does not, it fails. And I say this out of an experience that I had watching when I was a fresher in the field coming up. There's this thing called a patent troll. How many people know what a patent troll is, right? This is someone who comes up with a patent that maybe doesn't have a lot of real value to it, but they go around knocking on your door and say, you're infringing this patent. You can't figure out what the patent means because it doesn't make any sense. But then they threaten you. I will take you to court, and we will litigate, and I will cause your company lots of trouble. So pay me to go away. And that's why they call them the troll. You pay them, they go away. And this happened in our field. This happened, 2000, 2005, 2000, that sort of era. And it sort of became to the point when anybody thought about a patent, they thought about the patent troll.
And businesses started getting annoyed at patents. They wanted patents to go away. And we, as the bar, the lawyers and the judges and us are practicing in the field, we didn't do anything about it. We said, oh, it's okay. They're using the patent system. Well, what happened eventually is that the US Supreme Court came down and said, we're going to severely limit the way the patents work because we have to stop this nonsense of people claiming all these abstract ideas. And so we had this decision that came down that swept aside, I would say, for software patents, I don't know, a good third of the patents were sort of swept away, the good and the bad. And that's what happens. The Supreme Court is like the parent that punishes the child. And we, as the bar, didn't do anything about it. We said, oh, well, it's okay. We have to be self-regulating. We have to stand up and take responsibility for what's going on in our field. And I will say that these issues that we look at today, they're going to be very similar. We can just sit back and say, oh, these AIs are causing all these problems, but it's not my problem. Well, if you're in a field, and I don't know what field different people are in, some of you may be in the law field, some of you may be in the textile field, some of you may be in the journalism field, I don't know what field it is. But we have a responsibility in each of our respective professions to stand up and get together in our professional groups and have something to say about how this works. And for IP, that means it needs to benefit the public. If the IP stops benefiting the public, then there's something wrong. And we need to go back and fix it because that's the reason it exists. And this is not just a feel-good thing, oh, I'm patting myself on the back, I'm helping the public. It will cease to exist. The courts and the lawmakers will get rid of it if it doesn't do its function. So we need to make sure that it does its function. So that's my theme for today. So what gets protected? Well, traditionally, the law protects any of a wide variety of different things, right? We know that we can protect poems, films, videos, books, all these different things. And we compensate the author, or if it's an inventor, say you come up with some new way of washing walnuts or something like that, okay. Then you get the patent on that, and that's supposed to incentivize the creativity. So that's the idea. The idea is that we hold this IP system out, and people come up with things. We have copyright, we have patent, we also have trademark, we have other things, but this is what gets protected. So the question is, what legal content exists for content creator whose work is used in an AI training? And how do we track it? So now I come up with something, and this is a copyright issue, generally, although it's somewhat of a patent. Let's say as an author, I come up with 10 poems. And now the AI is trained on those 10 poems. And I ask it to generate another poem. And guess what? It generates a poem that looks a lot like the 10 poems that I did. And it feels like it's copying. It's not technically copying, though, because it goes into this AI model. And I could have a slide up here trying to explain how these AI models work. But it's very complicated, right? You have the attention model. You have all these different things that are involved, the different parameters and the weights. And then if you feed it with enough information, it begins to look like it's thinking. It's not thinking. It's just trying to predict what the next word will be. But if you give it enough information, it starts to look like it's thinking. Now, how do we protect the thing that goes in that's used in the training and comes out? Does that author get any kind of compensation? And this is a question that I don't have an answer to because, first of all, we don't even know how to track it. How many people you ask ChatGPT a question and it gives you an answer? You don't know where the answer came from. You go to somewhere like Perplexity, on the other hand. Perplexity will tell you where the answer came from. Is that the direction we should be going? Should we be going more in a direction of responsible use of AI, where the AI tells it where it got the information? You think about it. When we were in university, we wrote a paper. We had to provide the citations, right? We had to provide, so this is where we get this is where we get that. And certainly, you couldn't plagiarize. You can't just copy somebody else's thing. And it's not just a matter of monetary compensation. Yes, there's that. But there's also a matter of reputation and credit. Maybe attribution needs to at least be there. So I don't know, but these are some of the questions that we can see when we look at this. If it comes out of an AI, why should it be treated any differently? Well, some people say it should be treated differently because it's transformative. It takes the old thing and creates something, as was rightly said. It's a new age. The world is different. The things that come out of the AIs, it's a whole different thing. We don't need to worry about copyright. That's one side. The other side of the story says, no, wait a second. If you didn't have the training data, you wouldn't be able to generate the response. We have to somehow compensate the folks who created the training data. But how would you do that if you don't know where it comes from? And the way I like to look at this is, let's say like you have a protein bar, and you open up the protein bar, it tells you what's in it, right? I can look at the ingredients. Oh, this has whey protein, this has sugar, this has, whatever it has in it. That way the consumer can make an informed decision, right? I can look at the 2 bars and decide which one I want to choose because there's a list of ingredients. Do we need something like that for AI? Do we need to have it so that when I go to ChatGPT, it tells me where all the things came from? Or if I'm sued, if ChatGPT is sued, do they have to reveal where all that stuff came from? And do I choose, maybe as a consumer, maybe I choose my AI based on where the data came from. Maybe I'm a law student, maybe I'm a medical student, and I want to choose an AI that was trained on really good articles that are peer-reviewed articles that are validated studies, and that's where I want the answers to come from. I don't want them to come from somebody speaking in some online forum about what they think cures their disease, right? Because that's just people talking. I want something that's more reputable. But then do I have to pay for that? And as I understand it, there are certain AIs like this. I haven't used them, but I understand there are certain AIs where you can pay and then you get access to that. So it seems like we're already headed in that direction. Do we continue down that road? I don't know. But now when we say what gets protected, remember, one of the things that happens with the copyright is that it expires. So the idea is when you generate something, and I know India has the same type of situation we do in the United States where they keep extending the copyright term, right? It keeps going year after year after year. But the idea is that someday these things expire and go into the public, right? Shakespeare, do I have to pay a license to Shakespeare? No, right? This stuff is there, right? So it's the same type of stuff. Things that were from the 1910s, 1920s have now gone into the public domain. It seems like we've pushed that a little too far. Why aren't things from the 30s, the 40s, and 50s in the public domain, right? And with AI, maybe it expires in 5 years, right? I mean, is something really relevant in 50 years? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that if we want the copyright system to continue to exist, it needs to benefit the public. If we just copyright things and they're never shared with the public, then the copyright system isn't working the way it's supposed to. The same thing with a patent. A patent is supposed to expire. And as we know, patent expires 20 years, generally, after the application. Is that too long? Maybe it should be 5 years. Maybe it should be 10 years. I don't know. It's an interesting question. And we get to the AIs, does that mean that the AI, if an AI comes up with a patent, it would be less or more? I don't know. It also should be clear. One of the things about patents, and this is sort of something that I've heard a lot of people talk about, is they can't understand the patent. And they're in business, and they're sued, and they can't tell if they're infringing or not. So do we push on that? Do we push on somehow so that when we have these inventions that are related to AI, that they're clear, that I can figure out what the invention actually is? And then enablement. And enablement is very important. The patent must describe the technology in a way that someone can make and use the invention. So if I just file a patent application on an AI and I don't tell anybody how to make and use it, then I haven't done my part to disclose it, and it never actually benefits the public because I open this thing up and I can't figure it out. Now, does that mean, for example, that we have to take the models and provide them as part of the patent application? We might have to do something like that. And these models are very complicated and very lengthy, so it would be like a sequence listing or something like that. You'd have to provide this giant terabytes of information. How would you do that? I don't know, but it's just an idea. And then we get to who owns what. So now we talked a little bit about what we have. Now we have who owns what. Who owns the IP of AI-generated content? Well, different jurisdictions are coming up with different answers to this, and it was rightly said in another session, it would make sense if we had sort of a global framework on this, right? Because in today's world, somebody could be generating content in Ahmedabad, they could be generating content in Tokyo, they could be generating content in wherever, right? Kansas City. So who owns it? Does it matter where they are? Does it matter who's operating what? It could be the person who comes up with the prompt. The person who comes up with the prompt owns the content. But now wait a second. They just came up with the prompt. What about the person who generated the original content? The original content that is used to train, that then comes out with this derived content. And if I say derived, then I think it's a derivative work. And under copyright law, that would mean if it's a derivative work, then the original author gets some credit. I don't know. I don't know. It could be the way to do it. The other way to do it would be say, well, no, it's transformative. The original owner doesn't. And how would we ever compensate? And again, how do we track? So, same thing with inventions, not just copyright, but patent. How do we reward the creation of new and useful AI inventions? And some question, do we even need to have a patent system for this, right? It looks like that there are all these creations of these inventions anyway. They didn't create ChatGPT because they were able to get a patent on it. They created ChatGPT because they were able to capture all the attention and eyeballs, and people were doing clicks on it, right? Now they've taken over to the situation where the whole world is using this thing. And now they may, who knows what direction they'll go with it. They may try to monetize it in all kinds of interesting ways. And what are the limits of that? Now I will say that if you go back in time and you look at things like sewing machines or airplanes or even computers, there's always sort of this rush at the beginning to cover things. And then there's sort of a shakeout that happens. So that's probably what we will see in the AI space as well. There's this rush, and then there'll be a shakeout, and then there'll be some things that emerge as successful and some that don't. And then you enter into an incremental refinement improvement process. And that might be where the patents are the most useful. I don't know. And then we talk about a derivative work. Now, derivative work is a situation where you take someone else's work and you build upon it, just say very quickly. And it's a copyright idea. And when this is from an open source context, right? So how many people here have actually availed of an open source license, right? So what you do is you go and you get the software and it's provided for free. You do not pay. In fact, they can't charge you for it. It's part of the license. They can't charge you for the software. You can put together your own web server by going out and getting, say, an Apache web server, and the license says it's free. So you can do that. Now, if you take that code and you improve it in some way, guess what? Those improvements that you put in there also become free. So that's the idea behind the open source, and it rests on this derivative work. So the original creator owns it, and the one who uses it to create more owns it, and the copyleft license automatically activates to keep it free. The situation being in AI, though, is we don't know where this stuff is coming from. You could ask the AI to generate code, and it could generate code that actually has copyleft information in it. So if an AI is trained on copyleft material, what happens? Does that mean that everything that comes out of this thing is free? I don't know. Could be, right? Because the part of the license of the copyleft is that if you make a copy of it, you then take any derivative works and you contribute them back to the public interest. So this is an interesting question. Does everything eventually get touched by copyleft? Well, these people sort of like take over the entire works of all these AIs and everything will be free. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work out that way, but it's a question that we can ask. And then we have an author of an inventor, I should say an author or inventor must be a person. Can a machine invent? Can a machine be an author? And if so, okay, that's fine. Who owns it? Who owns the thing if the machine is the inventor? And how do we trace billions of contributions to our large language model? We keep coming back to that question. Where did it come from? What's the derivation? What's the provenance of this? And then how do we draw a line between the human and the AI author or inventor? And it was interesting because when I was at GNLU yesterday, and there was a student really thinking about these issues, much more than I have, and coming up with some interesting observations. These three aspects of creating any intellectual property: personhood, ideation, and labor. Personhood, we never really worried about that before, but now it's an issue, and we have to figure out how that fits into the equation. Ideation, we like to reward that. We like to reward the person who comes up with the idea, whether it's a patent or a copyright. In fact, it's the person with that spark of genius or spark of creativity that's rewarded. But there's also labor involved. And that's a lot of what the LLMs are doing. The LLMs are doing all this work for us. Does that get rewarded? Typically, no. Typically, if you are simply following somebody else's instructions or you're just copying what somebody else did, you don't get rewarded. But do we put labor into the IP equation? Do we reward folks for labor? I don't know. All right, so now let's move forward. I'll try to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes or so. So, ethics-based outcomes. Do we need a special IP framework for AI? And I say maybe or maybe not, but the principle of rewarding the creators is at the heart of the system. So how do we reward the creators? So we can go to a new system, but we need to figure out how to reward the creators. If we stay with the current system, we still need to figure out how to reward the current creators. And then, of course, to do that, we need to trace ownership. Again, we're back to the ingredient list. How do I know where these things came from? And maybe I can use blockchain to do that. I can trace every little piece. Maybe I use metadata in everything that it's trained. Where did I get it from? So that next time I provide an answer, remember when you used to get the web pages, there's a little button that's called View Source, and it shows you the source behind the web page. Imagine if you had something like that with an AI. Here's my answer. View source. Okay, here's where I got all that stuff from. All right? That would be a situation that would allow us then to trace it and citation and to avoid plagiarism. So, will we get this special framework for AI? Well, it's difficult for the lawmakers to understand this dynamic. They usually try to jump straight to the answers. I don't see that happening. We usually end up keeping what we have. But some changes need to be made, and maybe there will be some creation of some new category for AIs. That's quite possible. And so we want to ask ourselves, again, back to the question, how does the public benefit? If it's a copyright, it has to eventually expire. If it's a patent, it has to expire, it has to be clear, and it has to be enabled. All right? And also the copyright has to have some creativity associated with it, which is very small. So, will we shape IP policy for other reasons? Remember, I was saying that oftentimes what we do is we might make something illegal to stop it entirely, but to gently push things in a direction, we may change the policy of IP. So, will we try to achieve privacy somehow? Will we try to achieve fairness, like unfair AIs are not protected, or life-saving AIs have a compulsory license, and many other reasons, right? So this is when we get to the domain-specific professional codes of conduct, right? We have these. If you're in an industry, there is a code of conduct. For a law, we have ethics. We have model rules. We have all these codes, model code, model rules, that have all these provisions on how to navigate ethical problems, ethical dilemmas, ethical questions. IP could have one. Software development could have one. This gives you a framework, not the answer. So I'm not going to say that, the answer to the question is this or answer to the question is that, but these are the things that we take into consideration. And they're flexible in their application. So for example, it may not be illegal, but if you end up getting into a lawsuit, a court could look to this code and say, you know what, you didn't follow the code, did you? You went off and did your own thing, and now this terrible situation happened, we're going to hold you liable. So, when we look at fairness, there's inherent limitations on fairness, right? We want an AI to be fair. How do we measure that? How do we measure when we don't even have a ground truth of what's fair outside of the AI? How can we expect the AI to be fair? And AIs are mathematical, so how are they going to be fair? It's just we try to come up with a mathematical definition of fairness. We want this outcome, we want that outcome. So I don't know. So anyway, these are the takeaways that we have. We will see proposals and modifications of the law. And to move things forward, we need to understand the underlying policy to participate and push the law in the direction we want. And at the end, of course, it has to benefit the public. As I've seen in my life, if it doesn't do that, the courts, the politicians, and the public will get very irritated, and they will shut down the system. And I think we could be on the verge of something like that if we're not careful as to what direction we go. So we need reasonable things that people can understand that benefit the public. So I know it's a lot of different things that I covered. I went in a lot of different directions, and I apologize for the sort of the abstract nature of it. But when we have this much time, what I'm trying to do is touch each of the brain cells a little bit and try to bring some of these issues to the front. And I would be very happy when we're done, we could take some questions. And so with that, I'd like to thank you and turn it over to the next speaker. Oh, yeah. Here, let me get this.
Am I audible? Okay. So, thanks, Greg. It's really a great challenge to speak on the same topic. And it's again an opportunity to set forth individual views and whatever views Greg has expressed, I totally agree with that. So that doesn't mean that I will leave that opportunity to, share my views and along with currently as a software company, how we are tackling these situations and scenarios with respect to AI, ethics of AI, and how we are mitigating the potential challenges in terms of gap between inventor being a non-legal guy and legal people helping inventors to bring in that synergy to ensure that it is not a discouragement, rather it should be an encouragement to foster inventions, innovations, irrespective of whether it is based on AI or not in non-AI. What it should bring in is what Ratan Tata has already mentioned, that the best way to predict the future is to create it. Okay? And the real encouragement to inventors community is to have the monetization of their invention and ensure that how monetization is protected with respect to the safe and secured IP. Okay? So as the topic rightly mentioned, while doing that, are we really maintaining the ethics and legal framework in order to avoid the future consequences with respect to infringement, litigation, and public at large should get benefited, as Craig has rightly mentioned. So in my presentation, I probably would like to cover these topics, considering majority of audience is students, I guess, right? How many of you are students? Raise your hands. Okay, and all of you are from law background or it's a mixed? So commerce. Okay, so I have tried my best to make it as understandable as everybody, irrespective of your domain. And so I will just share a brief of introduction of artificial intelligence, its history and evolution, and ethical aspects of AI, and IP and legal, and how AI affects its ethics, and balancing with responsible AI. Okay. Artificial intelligence, I mean, we all know the intelligence which is not natural, if I have to define it like that. So people who are sitting here is owning the natural intelligence. okay? And when we as a human being train certain machines with respect to follow our order, we are basically transmitting our intelligence to the machine, which is a non-living entity, and the intelligence outcome provided by that machine will be referred to as a artificial intelligence, okay? So just for the information, these are the historical events wherein a concept of AI has came into existence. So it was the Alan Turing who actually initially came up with a paper which says about computing machinery and intelligence, introducing the Turing test and opening the doors to what would be known as artificial intelligence. And subsequent to that, we have seen many scenarios wherein intellectual property has contributed by AI. Like for example, in 1952, Arthur Samuel developed a Samuel checker playing program, and that is the world's first program to play games that's self-learning. I mean, to give you a very simple example, during the non-smartphone eras, people used to play chess on a computer. And who is the opponent? Is the computer. So you are basically playing a chess with a computer. So that was itself is a best example of artificial intelligence. And then if you remember this guy, Gary Kasparov, has been defeated by IBM's Deep Blue, okay? So again, the basic fundamental principle is probably IBM's Deep Blue was provided with all sort of prompts wherein all sort of ways of chase steps have been included or embedded in that. And again, Gary Kasparov being a human being has a limited ways of knowing the steps. And this basically has proven the fact that if you train the machine in a way beyond the capacity, it has a capacity to defeat the natural intelligence also, okay? So these are the examples which are laid back in those eras and how it evolved. So today we have evolution of artificial intelligence in terms of, recently we have seen this DAL-A, which is a multimodal AI system that can generate images from the text prompt. I mean, we all are using ChatGPT and Copilot, all these tools to generate or get an information. Again, deep face. Today we are facing this problem enormously. I mean, most of you are using Instagram Reels and all. You might be seeing so many deep fakes. I mean, recently, few months ago, we have seen Kim Jong and Donald Trump playing golf together, something like that. So for a person who doesn't know about AI and deepfake technology, he will believe that it's probably a true thing, okay? That's the power of AI, which is creating societal problems in current scenarios. So these are a few of the examples which I thought may begin the relevance to the topic. Although AI has certain pros, it equally has certain cons, okay? So I have listed a couple of advantages and disadvantages of artificial intelligence, considering that how ethically it can be used, and there are unethical issues also. So instead of going through each of these, you can have a look at it. So it is available because of examples like ChatGPT, Copilot, and all. And there are all again disadvantages because you lack a creativity. Initially, every human being used to think before answering the question. Now, technology is in your pocket, is in your hand. You immediately write the keywords and get the answer out of it. You have an app, and you are not even relying on Google to answer your queries. You have easy options. Okay. Now, how it has originated, the ethics of AI. way back in 1942, Isaac Asimov, a science fiction writer, he was a writer, and he has identified the potential dangers of autonomous AI agents in 1942, long before the development of AI systems. How? He created the 3 laws of robotics as a means of limiting those risks. So he has anticipated the future. He has foreseen the future, because when he realized that one fine day robots may take over the human beings, and he has laid down the codes of ethics based on his studies about robots. The first law forbids robots from actively harming humans or allowing harm to come to humans by refusing to act. Okay? The second law orders robot to obey humans unless the order aren't in accordance with the first law. Okay? And the third law orders robot to protect themselves insofar as doing so in accordance to the first and 2 laws. Okay? So the prediction of future by Isaac was based on the robotics which he has developed, and the basic crux of his rules was human should not be at danger. Okay? Technology is meant to be used by human, not to use human beings. It's other way around. So what are AI ethics in a technical scenarios or in a technical language? It is a system of moral principles and techniques intended to inform the development and responsible use of AI. Please remember these 2 words, responsible use of artificial intelligence. Okay? Because artificial intelligence is an integral to product and services, and organizations are also starting to develop AI codes of ethics. So if you look at the websites of IBM and other Samsung and other important players in the market, you can see the code of ethics they have mentioned on their website. Okay? An AI code of ethics, also called as AI value platform, okay, which is a policy statement that formally defines the role of artificial intelligence as it applies to the development and well-being of humans. Again, I'm going back to the rules, 3 rules which Isaac has laid down, and the basic fundamental principle is to protect the well-being of human beings. Okay? And what is the purpose of AI code of ethics? Is to provide stakeholders with guidance when faced with an ethical decision regarding the use of artificial intelligence. Okay? Now these are various ethical challenges when work with AI. People think that AI might replace human beings. People may think that it may replace human jobs. I mean, every time there is a technological revolution, there is a fear that stays for some times in the society. Like when calculator came into existence, people who used to do manual calculations, their job has gone, and something similar to that. I remember some of the incidences wherein people used to use typewriter, and there used to be an exam for typing and all. And suddenly now nowhere you will see the typewriters. Okay, so technological evolution comes up with some kind of restrictions and some kind of adaptability to the human beings and society. Okay, deepfake we have already seen, bias, explainability, responsibility, fairness, ethics, privacy, environmental hazard. These are the different ethical concerns and challenges that are recognized by experts. Okay. Now, if I have to give you examples wherein ethical issues were involved, there is one chatbot which was designed by Microsoft to mimic the teenager. Okay. What is chatbot? The chatbot gives an information about the organization. If you go to the railway website, there is a chatbot. If you go to the bank website, there is a chatbot. But what had happened? It began spewing the racist hate speech within an hour of its release online, and Microsoft has to immediately shut down that bot. Okay. Now that was a preliminary way of failure wherein Microsoft was not able to encourage that kind of prompts or imbibe the actual prompts. So nowadays, if you look at the chatbot is the best example of AI with a directed and intended purpose of activity or outcome. Okay. If you go on a chatbot, for example, on a railways website, and their chatbot has different names, okay, like Disha or something like that. You can ask any question not relating to railway, they will respond to you, sorry, I'm not able to understand your question. So that means they have got programmed in such a way that they will work on the specific prompt and the subject matter. So that is the example of ethical AI, okay. Then the second example is scammers used AI to impersonate a company's CFO, creating a deepfake that was so convincingly real that they got a finance worker at the company to pay out $25 million. Okay, so these are the unethical examples of use of artificial intelligence, and there are others also. Now, recently, if you see this 2024 example, wherein British Columbia tribunal found Air Canada liable for misinformation, that is a chatbot provided to a customer, and awarded about 800 US, I think it's not $800, it might be more than that, it's a typo error, damages to the plaintiff. Air Canada had tried to disavow its responsibility for the chatbot that provided erroneous information about the company's policy on Breverment fares, but the tribunal decision indicated that company is accountable for the action of its AI system. Okay, so you cannot say that AI is creating havoc. It's the human being who is creating the AI is responsible for these actions. Okay. Now there are various issues in terms of IP and legal. So when I'm saying IP and legal, it's IP with respect to the ownership of the intellectual property that has been created. Legal, that's the actions or the remedies which needs to be taken care with respect to the non-compliance. So the legal aspect of AI and IP rights revolve around the creation, promotion and use of intellectual property in the context of AI. In the development of AI, ethical responsibilities are paramount, and developers of IT industries or software industries must prioritize the transparency, fairness and accountability to mitigate the societal harms. Okay. Now, these are the various challenges with respect to IP and legal domain or area, I would say. The ownership and attribution, I mean, Greg has already covered it, like who will be the author, who will be the inventor, who will own the intellectual property, how patent examiner will decide that whether that inventor is a person or a machine. Okay, patentability like patent laws and TRIPS. Like in one of the morning session, when it comes to framing the law, today intellectual property rights are based on the fundamental principles laid down by WTO and TRIPS agreement. Okay, so if there needs to be a framework to be developed for AI related inventions also, then all WTO and TRIPS members should come and formulate that strategy the way they have strategized the non-patentable inventions which has gone into Section 3 of the Indian Patent Act. Similarly, these bodies has to come up with the strategies and guidelines for inventors and for industries and legal bodies to frame out what kind of guidelines they should follow when comes up with inventions having AI, and what kind of examination should happen with respect to AI related inventions and how they get prosecuted. Okay. Again, data privacy is one of the important aspect when it comes to legal framework of protecting AI related inventions, and all these important aspects, ethical AI development, clear AI inventorship criteria, standardized licensing agreement, global harmonization, I just mentioned it, and collaborative approach between policymakers and AI developers. Okay, so when you think of these important points, you will realize that each of these points contribute to the IP and legal framework standardization. Now, if you have to balance with responsible IP for this IP and legal framework, these are the important aspects which exist, like confidential information, open source obligation, IP rights in and ownership of AI outputs, IP infringement and deepfakes, and importance of legal guardrail. See, guardrails are basically tools or a kind of systems which you need to integrate with your AI system. It's like control. Like you take vaccine, What does vaccine do? It attack only on that infectious agent which it is meant for. Okay, if you are taking a vaccine for I would say tetanus, it will act only on the bacteria which is responsible for causing tetanus. It will not affect the other organism. Guardrail has that kind of object oriented control on the AI system. Okay, so if we have to balance the legal and IP related ethical output, we have to ensure liability, indemnification, and IP laws and system, because AI mainly focus on three cognitive skills: learning, reasoning, and self-correction. Okay. We always say that practice makes man perfect. Okay. AI also follow the same thing. But the one who is giving the practical assignment to AI will remains as human being only. Because unless and until you give a prompt, AI will not be able to take up those instructions and act accordingly. There were two recent cases which I thought I can just relate over here. So it was between Naruto versus Slater, 2018. This case involved a monkey taking a selfie. Most of you might have seen that monkey having a cell phone and taking the selfie. And in another image, the selfie was projected. Okay. Using a photographer's camera, it raised a question about whether animal or AI system can hold copyright. Okay. The US Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against animal or AI authorship, but highlighted the need for legislative or regulatory solution. So what Greg has already covered in this topic, I'm supporting with the precedents and examples that this is a real need of having a legislative or regulatory solution. And this is again like in 2021, in an intriguing patent controversy emerged when Dr. Stephen Thaler submitted patent application for two inventions created by AI system known as DABUS. And Dr. Thaler argued that DABUS should be recognized as the inventor, challenging conventional notions of inventorship. However, the US Patent and Trademark Office rejected the application, asserting that only natural person can be inventors under the current patent law. So this clearly states that will not allow machines to take over on us. Okay. So what is the thought process? If you ask my individual opinion, I feel it should be like, it should go hand in hand, because we can make use of technology for the benefit of people. Like we can anticipate the infectious diseases based on the data. We are facing climate changes in last couple of years, so we can easily identify what kind of diseases or pandemic can arrive considering all these scenarios. What kind of immunity or herd immunity you might have, aware of this word. Herd immunity means when there is a pandemic which gets over, people get naturally immunized or get acquainted to that particular infection. So whether AI will help to build such kind of system wherein we can, predict the future consequences in terms of environment, in terms of diseases, in terms of getting human race saved from those disasters. So in continuation with what can be balanced with responsible AI. Okay. Now here I'm giving a kind of food of thought that how human beings and AI can work together for the benefit of the society. Okay. Inventiveness, consistency, and security. These are the three important aspects, because invention is something which human beings can only do because human beings can think. Okay. Machine cannot invent unless and until you artificially ask and provide them the prompt. So inventorship will remains forever with human beings. Consistency with respect to the evolution of thoughts and evolution of inventiveness, and security. Security as in providing the secured systems and not getting into the disastrous outcome, just like Microsoft. Artificial intelligence long-term sustenance appear to be a human inventiveness, that's for sure. And many people argue that AI is exceptional at many things, far above human expectations, but it won't be easy to be creative as there are many unknown things about the creative process. In human beings' creative process is an non-ending things. The only reason why, because we have a well-developed central nervous system, which machines do not have, and we implement those inventive minds to the machine artificially. Okay. Although there is a strategy that we can employ to foster creative thinking, we are ultimately unsure of how it unfolds. Okay. It's challenging for scientists to simulate our biological processes on a machine due to the lack of knowledge. And once this happens, then you can see the real robots roaming around us. But being a human body truly very complex, it's very difficult to simulate the function of human body. Okay? So the collective efforts of policymakers, AI developers, and stakeholders are essential in forging a regulatory environment that effectively balances innovation with ethical and legal consideration. So I am coming at the end of my presentation. So what future holds for all of us? Stay curious, focused, and positive. Don't think that we'll replace by robots or AIs or something like that, because AI will transform the workplace for many businesses, but it cannot drive this transformation. We have to drive this transformation with the help of AI. Okay. So the future of AI in the workplace will not be one of full job automation, but rather a collaboration between humans and machine. Absolutely. And AI cannot create a validated purpose, imagine constraint, or respond to paradigm shifts. These jobs will require human expertise. Okay. So lastly, I would say that humans serve as the visionary behind AI-enabled project. Human help put in place rules for AI. Humans serve as a subject matter expert. AIs will transform how companies do business, but they will not drive this transformation. And symbiotic partnership between machines and people is key to creating collaborative relationship. So it's simple. We'll never be a slaves of machine. We have that steering, or I would say a kind of joystick to control how we use the technology. Okay, it's not the competition between human beings and AI or AI and human beings. It's yet another technological revolutions which we are witnessing, and we have to make use of it for the benefit of ours. So that's something which is rightly listed here, that advanced human brains collaborate with high-performing and artificial intelligence to accomplish difficult tasks, create new possibilities, and beautify the world. So that's the end of my slides. Greg?
So thank you, Mr. Nilesh. The last line was really a kind of relaxation, that there would be a collaboration, there wouldn't be a competition. So the forum is open for the questions, if any, and you can point out to the expert whom you want to pose the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Greg and Mr. Nilesh Bhai, for very informative sessions. I am Dr. Manoj Vandra, working with Central University of Gujarat as an Associate Professor, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. Sir, I have two questions in my mind. One is, if I am a researcher, or if I am writing some research paper or book, something like that, and I have collected some information or gathered some information with ChatGPT or AI, and if I want to write some citations or references, so how can I give that citations and references, number one? And number two, what about the purity of data or originality of data which collected with use of AI or ChatGPT? These two questions I have in my mind, sir. Mr. Gregg, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so I think you've hit upon something that that is at the heart of what we've been talking about, which is how do I trace the provenance of data? If I'm writing a paper and I read somebody else's work that inspires me and I cite it, right? And this is how all of science works, right? We stand on the shoulders of other giants and we make incrementals. This is the way our society, typically when we find a cure for some new disease, we don't come up with the whole thing, we come up with some piece that allows us to now cure that disease. And so we cite what we came from, and that allows folks to go back and see where we came from and validate. And then our paper gets added to this body of work, and that paper is validated, peer reviewed, and stands and has this purity of and has a stamp of approval by whatever Cell magazine or whatever it is the publication is. So now you raised a bunch of questions, which is if I get information from ChatGPT, how do I even cite that? What do I do? Do I perhaps put in a citation to the prompt that I used and the answer that I got? And then when I publish my paper, how pure is the data in my paper if I've been taking, has it been vetted, has it been properly vetted? It seems like one of the worst jobs to have today would be a review board of a journal. You have to now look at these papers coming in and figure out if this stuff is true or not, right? And you have to rely on the author to be honest and tell you this part I came up with and this part the AI came up with. And I actually have a rule on the team that I work with. If they put anything that came from an AI into any document, I want it highlighted or italicized so that I know that it came from somewhere. And I don't want it in there unless it's independently verified by some non-gen AI source. This is what we're looking at. And courts are requiring this now. When you file a brief, the last thing a judge wants to do is read something that ChatGPT said because it might not be true, right? So it's a good question, and I don't know how we do this. I think it'll start out like how are schools doing it? Can you cite to a ChatGPT in your papers? Or are you simply forbidden from using it? So, yeah.
So,
Yeah, Nilesh.
your question was relating to ChatGPT, right? Okay. Correct. So imagine the drawbacks of outcome which you are getting from ChatGPT. You know what? The complications when you receive those output or outcome from ChatGPTs, wherein you are not able to trace back the source. Now they are also improving. I mean, how many of you have used Copilot? Okay. So when you use Copilot, recently, if you are aware, they also start giving the references from which they have gathered the information. Do you agree? So they give that dot and the number. So if they get you a paragraph, below paragraph they will put a number 1, 2, 3. If you click on that number, they will take you back to the reference from which that paragraph has arrived. So I think you can use Copilot. So you get all the references and cross citations for your research paper.
Thank you, Mr. Nilesh, for that, apt answer. We can take up the next question.
Usually when we submit our assignments, usually the professor usually checks it using AI. They have some AIs and they inform us already that we will be using certain AIs to check your work to verify it. So you were asking about that, so I wanted to say that.
Can they detect whether your content came from an AI?
Yes.
They can figure that out now?
there is something called a zero AI, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so they use that and they correct AI from it. That if you are using AI or not.
AI detects whether the AI content.
So it's like competition between AI and AI.
Yeah. So, next question, please.
So, I have a counter to the Dabis point. The Dabis, basically now New Zealand created a robot and they made it a parliamentary member. So doesn't the Dabis debate get a moot kind of a situation? Because now if the parliamentary person will create something, then it is an owner. How do you solve that issue then?
I don't know. Is this for real? So this thing can vote?
Yes, so they created a robot and they made it a member of the parliament and it decides on a vote where there's no majority between the parties. They split the vote through the AI, whether this is the right decision to make or the wrong one.
I would rather flip a coin.
I would rather prefer a Shole coin. I mean, again, if I look at this particular example, and this is which parliament? New Zealand. Okay. I look at it as a very positive utilization of a technology. I mean, I don't really look at it as something which creates a problem, because there are two things basically. They are using science and technology with a political science, and that is helping them to take a valid and unbiased decision. Okay, so I think this case is a valid example of the context of this topic, ethical AI. So if we get such kind of, I'm not calling it as a robot, a system, I would rather say. You can shape it as a human or something like that. You can put a chair and, just what chairman is trying to, give the verdict on. So according to me, if you come up with such kind of combination of sciences and technologies, which helps you guide in taking the decision, it's not again an opinion, it's a kind of one of the guiding source. Just like for students, they have a guiding source of Google, ChatGPT and other thing. For people who are sitting in parliament, they might not have a science and engineering or technology background. So for them, that robot probably will help to make them understand in a simple way that what is the issues and what can be done with respect to that issue. It's similar to judges, because in most of the countries, when infringement issue comes, mostly infringement issues are typically technical issues. Do we have the technically qualified judges who can read claims and identify the difference between inventive steps and inventions and give the right judgment? So I think these kind of robots or AI systems may comes up and help judges to take a decision, not to enforce the decisions.
I think we can take up the last question.
Okay, specifically, I have a question. Like, do we have any regulatory framework, because you are in industry, Nilesh, that make protecting who are the innovators, and later on they can get some monetary benefit also. So, is there still we have any draft regulation or?
So this question is not relating to AI, right? This is a general question. Okay, fine. So recently, Indian government or Indian Patent Office came up with this inventor certificate thing. Okay, earlier that was not in existence. It's just the bibliographic data on which you can see the names of inventors appearing on the bibliographic data of any patent specification. The first initiative which they have taken is they used to put inventor's name on the grant certificate. Okay, few years back. Recently they have started, whoever is interested the inventor of the patent, can request patent office by paying certain fees on a prescribed form, can get a inventor certificate from the Indian Patent Office. But there are no such regulations or something like that with respect to reward and recognition to the inventor. It is all depends on an organization's internal HR policies, human resource policies, because the basic fundamental principle which exist in any corporate or in any legal entity or in any organization, that once a person get hired or recruited by the organization, on the very first 2 days or 3 days during the induction program, he or she has to sign an agreement, which usually we don't read any agreement, we just say okay and sign it. There is one clause which says that during the tenure of your employment with this organization, whatever intellectual property will be created by you will be assigned to the organization wherein you are working. Now that is something which is, you are legally bound and accepting the terms and conditions. You are assigning all your IPs to the organization in which you are working. Now it's organization's policies to promote and motivate inventors to come up with new ideas. So there are certain things like they give rewards and recognition. They give some kind of gifts during the annual functions or during the what you can say annual increments and all those things. But there is no fixed regulation laid down by Government of India. These are individual organizations' policies which take a hold on these particular things. I hope I answered your question.
So with this last question, I think we can end this up. So I thank everyone on behalf of YJ Trivedi, AMA Academy of Intellectual Property Rights, to be present, participants. You were really engaging. Your attention was really focused, and the speakers could feel your interest in this particular subject, which is very critical. Various topics have been discussed by both the speakers. Few answers we have gathered, but few questions. In fact, we have got the new questions. I'm sure you'll all agree. So first of all, I would like to thank Greg to come all the way from USA and deliver this such a insightful talk. Greg, you really made us think how AI generated IP will be owned and then protected. And I really agree with your thought, and I'm sure the audience will have their own thoughts also, that the self-responsibility is the key to balance the ethics in the society, while we are all using AI in one or other way, in a smaller, greater amount. And the attribution to the original author and creator must be given, and that becomes our, ethical duty or moral duty. So that, I think we need to increase more as a user. Your futuristic thought of special IP framework is really thought-provoking. And thank you so much for your thoughts and your expertise. Mr. Nilesh, you gave us a, at the corporate side of the AI, how the team members at the corporate side invent using AI-based tool and even non-AI-based tool. And the duty of such authority or such leaders in the corporate to make sure that they stay motivated. And yet no ethical balance is still maintained, because there is a greater extent of liability on the corporate side. So we can imagine the kind of stress you have, that the team member must be made aware of their roles. And AI should never be a hurdle in this continuous process. It should be an enablement. Your pros and cons of AI usage in respect of ethics brought really greater clarity. So it's just like while we were students and we were studying the basics of Constitution, there were roles and there were rights and there were duties. So I think we now have to imagine the same, having the AI framework or AI tools in front of us. The guardrails has kind of striked. We had a few years back, we didn't have firewalls, that word wasn't much popular or not used. So I think guardrails would be the next thing. And I think we'll remember you all whenever we'll install guardrail in our systems. So thank you, Mr. Nilesh, for coming all the way from Pune, sharing your thoughts, expertise on this very critical topic, and we can feel the expertise you have, kind of generated in this last years being in this AI world. Thank you, AMA team, for your, kind of support for the smooth execution of this particular session. Thank you once again, and have a pleasant evening. Jai Hind. Thank you.